Hi, I'm MacLeod. Today I'll be walking you through a flight of the Trident 4 spaceplane. I got a lot of requests after people seeing the guide on heavy spaceplanes and the Trident 3 flight to do a video of the Trident 4. So here it is. It's quite heavy. It takes a payload up to orbit of about 35 tons in this version. This is at its maximum load. It's carrying a bunch of extra fuel, so it's about 70 or 80 tons. As you can see, it's just picking up there. So, this recording, just so you're aware, Fraps crashed, so the audio may be out of sync in places where I've cut it back together. I apologise for that, but this is the flight as it went, and I'll cut out the boring bits when I get to orbit and reveal the payload. I'm honestly a little surprised by the request. I typically prefer to do albums, but if you guys would like videos, let me know. The standard jet engines you see on the back, they contribute to the takeoff being possible. Just checking the fuel, as Trident 3 had an issue. You see there where the front left tank is draining but the front right tank isn't. That's because the middle right tank is draining and the middle left isn't. Just have a check at the cargo, make sure I did load the plane. Yep, sneak peek. The Trident 3 had a problem. As you can see, the fuel is not necessarily draining the way I like. The middle right tank is, in fact, draining, and the front left tank is draining. As you can see, those yellow pipes have been added to try and shift that problem, but it didn't correct it. So the next version, I finally fixed that problem. It is carrying more fuel than it needs, so this design would work a lot better just by emptying those front fuel tanks, removing them completely from the chance to cause a problem. I think that's something to do with the center of gravity being too close. Like, it's fairly in between those two tanks, and it must just do a slightly different calculation on each side to decide which tank to pull from. It resulted in the Trident 3 going into a massive spin and becoming, rather than the Trident 3 spaceplane, a Trident 3 debris field, so I will add a link to that in the description too. So, taking a while to get through this thickest part of the atmosphere. We're nearly 5 minutes in at this point, and still not breaking 10,000 meters. So 30,000 feet, 10,000 meters odd is the tropopause in Kerbal Space Program, just like it is on Earth. So you leave the thickest part of the atmosphere and enter the stratosphere, where you can start to pick up some real speed. That's why jetliners in the real world choose to fly at about this height. You'll notice the surface speed is increasing quite rapidly now compared to before. Just watching my rate of climb here. It's still a little steep, so I'm just keeping an eye on it, making sure I'm not picking up altitude too much faster than I'm picking up speed. I want to get a lot of my orbital speed in the atmosphere where the jet engines are cheap, because I can burn the air in the atmosphere. I don't I have to carry all my fuel and oxidizer, rather. Starting to run out of power from those low altitude jet engines, but with a dozen of them there, they're still worth 400 odd kilonewtons of thrust between the lot of them. I don't need the intake air yet, but I'll turn them off just to lower my rate of climb a little. Now this speed, above about 700 meters per second, where the wings start to get really effective. You start to notice the lift. You've got to be more and more careful as you get higher and faster. Fuel's being funny again. Let's pump some of this around. Should keep the nose careful. Let's get the last of that fuel out. What another spin. It's going to mean manual pumping of fuel around, unfortunately. Starting to pick up speed nicely now. Starting to get towards a dangerous altitude too. It's just a matter of slowing down my climb a little more, letting speed pick up as much as possible until the engines start to sound strange. And then fire the main rocket. Should buy us some more airspeed, which we can then keep those turbojet engines running for a little bit longer. Right on the edge, starting to get funny sounds now. Screwed up the climb. We're gonna lose it now. Main engine. If I had just a few more seconds with these thrusters, there they go. I've got all of the air intakes and turbojet engines on one action group so I can close them to reduce drag. This lump is still a weighty monstrosity, so I need to make sure I've got the balance in the right place. That front tank situation is still something I gotta keep an eye on. Otherwise I may spin out once I leave the stabilizing effects of the atmosphere. I'm through the thinner part of the atmosphere, leaving the top of the stratosphere now. And into the part of the atmosphere that is thick enough to slow you down, but not thick enough to really have enough air. Tend to just power through this bit with rocket engines. Okay, just get myself out of the atmosphere now. I'm not so worried about drag. Just get out as fast as I can. Minimize those effects. Still so much mass to move. Alright, we'll aim a little high just in case we have any oddities. This is a test plane after all. And we have to compensate for a little bit of drag. Around 100 I also find to be a convenient rendezvous altitude as well. Losing less altitude from drag than I was expecting. Handles itself quite well in atmosphere. Always surprising for something so heavy. Now let's just plan out an orbit. Try to get it nice. That should do. Not a long one. Well out of the atmosphere now. Still far more fuel than is necessary. It's definitely something for the later models I'll need to take into account. Every ton of fuel I bring up is a ton of payload I can't bring up. The next version I will just simply drop 30 odd tons of fuel, take up an additional payload to see how that goes. Unexpectedly over-engineered. I didn't think this aircraft would be capable of a 60-70 ton payload, but there seems to be some economy of scale there. Alright, let's just fast forward. Okay, now I'll start the burn a little early. There we go. The idea here is to keep the apoapse just in front of you so that you more or less get a stable orbit with one burn, but I've not got it quite right. So what do we have? 106, 103, yeah. Let's just fast forward through and get a more circular orbit slightly. Completely unnecessary, but I'm hoping it'll make sense when you see the payload. Let's just see what we'll need. Really? Righto. Let's get into position. Still so much weight in here. Drift, drift, drift. Look at that. Alright, that'll do. Let's just stop. Now, what we're doing here is actually not setting up the burn. We're just aiming in the right direction so that when we get there we can do a small tweak and make sure we're facing the right way, but we can turn in advance. Alright, now we just fire gently. There we go. Just correct with the RCS. Botched that. That'll do. Alright, time skip round to the light. 106, 106. Close enough. I should correct that inclination. It's only a degree, but it's easier to do it now. It's missing my rip-ups and peri-ups. I should have considered that. Another drifty turn. Let's give it a bit more. Alright, I can... Quite a large spinning object, I suppose. It must still be in the plus 300 ton weight at this point. Time skip through. And a tiny little burn. Alright. There we go. Just go over to that node to fire the last. There we go. That'll do. Hundred and 6.8, 107.8. This'll do. Let's just show the cargo. All right. Moment of revelation. And there we have it. In 3 cargo bays, we have the inventively named single stage station. Not sure I should move them across just yet. Let's decouple them. Alright. And then push our big ship out of the way. Oop. Cargo bay on the port side is getting stuck on something. Let's just wriggle that free. That seemed to do it. send some guys across. Let's have the first guy open up these ladders. Second scientist, on his way over. Well, the ladders didn't extend. And finally, the pilot. Rather than being in the science facility, he'll enjoy his time from the observatory. He'll also remote control those payload drones from there. Right. Let's close this up. I don't like the way those doors clip. I'll have to change that in a future version. And now for some time of painstaking docking, along with the bit where the game crashed. So I'm going to montage this bit, I think. extend the solar panels. You can probably tell to look at it that this is just a test payload to have a lot of weight rather than something I intended to be actually useful. Although, yeah, it has a certain charm to it. All wonky everywhere. Beautiful. Enough of that. Let's see from the observatory. Nice enough. Back to the plane. Let's get this finished. Where are we? We can probably get back to Kerbal Space Center from here, so let's adjust and do that. Let's see how this SAS maneuver node handles the big ship. Not afraid to use some RCS now. It's still got way more fuel than we really need for this operation. Handles a lot better without that extra load. Alright. Quick save in case I have any more trouble, and let's do a burn. It's going to be a steep descent. But fairly aerodynamic. Shouldn't be any problem. They're going a little far probably. Just have to fly jets on the way in. Alright. Check the fuel balance. Looks alright. Shifting it up the front now, just to give us a bit better of a set of flight characteristics for landing. It's probably unnecessary, but we can perfect the flying in planes that aren't test planes partway through a development cycle, I think. For now, let's just make everything as easy on us as we can. Loving looking forward to this, as always. I should probably turn us prograde. a lot more controllable. It's more like a whale doing synchronized swimming now than a brick. Okay, we should have re-entry soon. Still picking up speed faster than we're losing it. Although the rate of descent there is starting to look violent. I'm gonna miss it by miles. Turn some of these back on. It's gonna be a bit of a flight. Might not look it, but it handles quite well on Leiden. The two drogue chutes, you can just see one on the right there, next to the side engine clusters. They let you keep the speed really low whilst having your engines throttled up for proper control authority, which is a problem with the jet engines. The spooling, it makes it significantly more difficult than a rocket engine to make fast changes. That. Turn on the stuff though, I don't forget it now. Little tweaks to the angle I'm coming in at. Now, looking over at this again in hindsight, I have a ton of oxidizer left. I should probably have shot myself forward with oxidizer and come into the thicker part of the atmosphere a lot later than I did. But I think I was as interested in testing the flight characteristics at this point. Alright, atmosphere's thickening up. Notice the speed washing off quite quickly now. Also, the game's starting to get a bit jerky. Bit of a spike there. Yeah, mountain range. Definitely gonna have to throttle up. Go over all of that. Coming in from one side to a point as well. Bring myself around. Now, one of the tricks pilots use to know if they're going to clear an obstacle in the distance is you pick a point on the screen. In a real plane, you'd look at a windscreen and pick a point on it and see if the thing you're aiming towards flying through is going down relative to that point or going up. If it's going up, then you're tracking below the point you're aiming for, which means you're not going to make it. You'll need to turn around and do a spiral to make it through. But if obviously it's going down, then you're tracking above it. It's not an issue here. My rate of descent's still pretty crazy, but I've got enough power to climb out. I've certainly got enough power at this speed anyway to keep it up. I make a second mistake here. I go into the thicker part of the atmosphere. I should probably stay above 10,000 meters until I get a little closer. I'm trying to correct it, but probably not trying hard enough. I should really kick in the rocket booster. You'll notice the prograde vector on the nav ball has dropped below the horizon. And you can see Kerbal Space Center coming in at the bottom there, just on that isthmus. Aiming for that gap in the mountains turned out to not be necessary. Now this is a technique that you'll sometimes see pilots use called a long final approach. This is a little longer than and shallower, much shallower than you would typically get this kind of approach. The terminal velocity underneath 10,000 meters is about 250 meters per second. So that's the speed I'm going to slow down to, and that's the point where it's very difficult for your engines to push through. And if you watch for a minute, that'll lead to my final mistake of the flight. Let's accelerate this bit in post. And turning on time warp is fine when it's unladen. This plane handles nicely enough to fly in time warp. It's sturdy. But this technique where I just keep turning it on and off again, this is a technique I like to call poking the Kraken. And as you might imagine, it's the final mistake I make on this flight. As you can see, I'm struggling to keep it above 250 meters a second. I'm still slowing down to that speed in spite of all the engine power I have. Actually coming onto a reasonable glide slope here. It's certainly taken long enough. And my patience finally wearing thin. It's time to poke the Kraken again. Just testing the strength of the frame. Seems pretty solid. Yeah. Virtually indestructible, I'm thinking to myself. And then the Kraken bites. Now, I'm left with some limited options here. There's only a single parachute on this part of the plane. At least it is a low altitude, high drag parachute. So my plan here is to nose down as hard as I can so that when it opens I'll swing and hit the ground hard with the part of the plane that's not the cockpit. Hopefully. There we go. And is it going to be enough? Victory-ish. Lovin looks a little stunned. Well, not ideal. And there's the Space Center. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Yeah, have a good day.